Hi everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of July the 26th, August the 1st, 2021. We have an active sky with two very important energy shifts taking place this week. One of them is Mercury changing signs, leaving the sign of Cancer and entering Leo, while Mars leaves the sign of Leo and enters into Virgo. Also, this is one of the weeks where we have a lot of quincunxes in the sky. A quincunx is a minor astrological aspect which links together two areas of life which apparently have nothing in common with each other. So usually this manifests as awkward, surprising, random, pretty weird moments. And it is really up to us to find meaning in those moments, or sometimes a quincunx can be almost like a celestial, like a karmic task given to us to find compatibility between two different energies, ideals, philosophies, ways of thinking, modus operandi. So all of these are inner expressions, while other times, they are more external events where we have to find the connection, we have to find the meaning, or we just simply have to work with what we got. And the more random, the more apparently incompatible what we have in our lives is, well, the more challenging a quincunx is going to feel like. But fortunately, even though this is a hard aspect, usually it's not very dramatic, it's not very intense. For example, the quincunxes which the moon holds usually are moments of minor fears or surprises, unexpected emotions, unexpected ways of perceiving reality, for example. So they come as like an emotional awakening, but with a little bit weirdness, a little bit awkwardness. Or another example, for example, a quincunx that Venus might hold might represent, for example, a source of love, a source of value, a source of, let's say, emotional nurture, which might come from a very unexpected place, a very unexpected area of life, a very unexpected person, for example. Or let me just tell you another very frequent quincunx, which Mercury usually holds with other planets. Mercury is very quick, so it always kind of forms quincunxes all throughout the year in different positions. And the quincunxes of Mercury can come across as, for example, really, really humorous, funny, unexpected moments which have a lot of humor to them. It is almost like the divine sense of humor, if this makes sense. Or, for example, certain kind of verbal communications or written communications which have misunderstandings or misinterpretations to them. But instead of these causing, for example, like drama and conflict, these create very funny and humorous moments which we are very inclined to remember and recall throughout many times in our lives, how funny this and that was. And the reason why I'm telling you this is that when we have a lot of this type of energy or quincunx in the sky, well, we can expect a little bit of randomness, a little bit of awkwardness. We might find it really hard to make sense of whatever is happening. And not necessarily in a way that it's also misty, foggy, we're not able to process, not in a very severe way like that. But rather we need to invest a little bit of extra effort in order to find or sometimes create a meaning, a sense, to find a connection with whatever is happening in our lives. With a quincunx is not necessarily where the karmic forces, the celestial forces, our higher selves are guiding us to behold the greater meaning of this and that, the average karmic revelations, but rather it's up to us, our creativity, our ingenuity, the inner resourcefulness that we possess, may it be emotionally, mentally, spiritually, for us to give a meaning to something that we perceive as maybe mysterious, maybe random, maybe unusual. And sometimes it can be that something that happens in our lives makes sense only and only to us personally in the context of our uniqueness, our personality, our life story. Outside of that, it might really not have any meaning or any sense. But it's more important what it means to us personally, because basically this is also a tool of navigation in life and co-creation. When we're able to give a meaning, a sense to something, well, that is already us acting like diligent creators and owners of our lives and our inner being. So after we understand how a quincunx usually plays out, let's see the most predominant quincunxes. Well, just at the beginning of the week, the Sun holds a quincunx with Jupiter. The Sun in the sign of Leo, of course. So that means a lot of heart energy, a lot of creational energy, but at the same time the ego, the identity, the expression and projection of the self has to find a way to be good bedfellow with Jupiter in the sign of Pisces, which is a deeply spiritual, unconscious, almost psychological, emotional energy. So this quincunx will definitely solicit our spiritual muscles, so to speak, because Jupiter is also the planet of our subjective inner truth, what truth itself means for us personally. And of course that can be only found within us, in our beings, in the very core of who it is that we are. And of course, compared to this, the Sun in Leo, the ego and the identity, is a very superficial energy, because, is our identity valid outside of the human world and human sphere? Where our inner truth and who it is that we are in a soul level is definitely valid and continuous, but the ego not so much. So this will be a celestial invitation to unite the ego with our, let's say, soul identity, to find a bridge, to find a solid connection between the two. And this is really, really up to us. This is where no one else, not even the divine, not even a highly skilled and masterful psychoanalyst or hypnotist would be able to help us, because we have to give that meaning. So there won't be any guidance there. We have to find it and create it for ourselves. And even though this isn't very easy, because it really, really requires deep contemplation, yet the reward is our ego, the Sun in Leo, the very core of our human identities, can be integrated into our immortal selves. Another such quincunx is between Mars and Pluto. This can be quite an intense and also assertive energy, because both of these planets have much to do with power. Mars is the male principle, Mars is our drive, Mars is the inner power, the strength of will that we possess, while Pluto is psychological power, the hand of faith, and of course, especially in the sign of Capricorn, the power that basically the social structure, society, and the world has over us as individuals. So this quincunx, it is going to be like a question we ask ourselves, and the answer can only be given by the self as well. How much power do we allow, the world, society, the government, whatever you can think of, according to the symbolism of Capricorn, for example, a boss, any authoritarian figure, a parent, a manager, an administrator, a king, a leader, whoever that is, a partner, of course. How much power do we allow all of these to have over us, and how much power do we keep for ourselves? Then the next quincunx is between Mercury and Jupiter. Now this is also a highly contemplative and philosophical aspect, because Mercury by now is going to be in the sign of Leo, so that is heart energy. Mercury is not at its very, very best in this part of the sky. Yet fortunately, it can be very, very quick, it can be very spontaneous, it can be, instant. So this energy can actually create a lot of moments of sudden realization, epiphanies, dreams, symbolic dreams, even daydreams, or simply us projecting the true desire within our hearts, the sign of Leo of course, onto everything. And this can be also like an unconscious projection where we start seeing everywhere we look, in everything that we do, the results, the potential of our desires coming to life. The good side of this energy is that it's very optimistic, idealistic, surreal. This is actually where, oh, don't worry, everything is going to be okay, even when all odds are against you. But the downside of this energy, well, if we get lost into this, we might not really be able to process life and whatever is happening in our lives in a very down-to-earth way. We may end up way too high in the clouds, which means there is going to be a down moment. So with this aspect, we need a certain degree of control of how much do we allow ourselves to go up or down. And finally, towards the very end of the week, we have quincunx between Venus and Saturn. Venus by now is a little bit debilitated. She is in the sign of Virgo, where she's not able to express her higher Venusian qualities. But of course, this is still a really helpful and useful and practical energy, so that is really, really good. And of course, Saturn is also a very down-to-earth, reality-oriented, material type of energy. So this quincunx might be inviting us to behold the reality of the situation in our lives, in our present moment. The sign of Virgo is all about our daily rituals. It is the daily work that we invest into, for example, our lives, ourselves, job, profession, etc. The service that we provide, also self-sacrifice. But of course, Virgo is a mercurial part of the sky, so there is a lot of intelligence, ingenuity, practicality, study, meticulosity to it. And all of these are traits which Saturn really, really likes. So this can be quite positive because, Venus in Virgo, Venus can be our needs, what we are attracting. Virgo is practicality, material stuff, like connections, practical solutions, practical advice, a professional, to go and do and actually accomplish something. And this is where Saturn can be a person, for example, a mentor, a teacher, a highly influential person, someone who we know and respect, who can give us that help, either through something intellectual, because Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius, so that is mental energy. They can inspire us with something, communication. The sign of Aquarius is all about the internet, interhuman connections. But of course, they can also represent what we need to sacrifice and our limitations. So this is where we have to basically decide what we can accept and what we cannot accept. May it be that which we ourselves have to sacrifice, or what another person, that Saturn, sacrifices for us. So we need to find balance here for this to be equitable, fair, and just. But of course, what all of these mean for us personally, well, that is, up to us to decide and judge. No one and nothing else can help us in this because, it is simply our judgment, and that's it. So this is basically how usually quincunxes play out. And even though usually there are very minor influences, when there is a lot of these energies and they're very different in nature and expression, in those moments they do tend to be quite influential, like next week. But besides these, of course, we have much more bigger and influential energies. For example, at the very start of the week we have a supremely harmonious trine between Mercury, at the beginning of the week still in the sign of Cancer, and Neptune. And this is really positive energy. This is blessed communication. Mercury, after all, the planet of trade, communication, the flow of energies, the travel of documents, even the travel of people. Neptune is divine inspiration, inner truth, the connection to source and the spirit. It is also our artistic expressions. So this energy is really good for emotional nurture, for example, connecting to your friends, to your family, to your culture, returning, visiting your home, your place of birth, your family. It is also good for connecting with people from the distant past, like childhood friends, classmates, people who used to be significant in your life. This is also good for artistic inspiration, creativity, emotional nurture, emotional healing. That Jupiter in Pisces has dissolving qualities where it can very quickly, especially in retrograde motion, it can heal traumas. It can just lighten up the inner conflict, the inner chaos, the inner pain, for example. It can also play out and as blessed, really inspirational, loving communication from even total strangers. This is where the divine can manifest in our lives as the words of other people, which are aimed at our greatest good, our well-being. They're basically blessings, which manifest in our lives as communication. We also have, at the very beginning of the week, an opposition between Venus and Jupiter. Well, Venus is not in a very strong position here, because she is in fall in the sign of Virgo, while Jupiter is extra powerful in its home sign of Pisces. But this energy can be quite useful because it is solution oriented, but from a rather karmic perspective. Venus in the sign of Virgo can simply represent all of our material needs, the needs of our physical self, our body, like food, like healthcare, like a source of income, or any kind of solution to a practical problem that we might have. And Jupiter in Pisces can be a very karmic, fated, spiritual energy. And when two planets are in opposition, their symbolism balances each other out. So even though they are against each other, so to speak, they face each other, the purpose is to find a balance. And even though this is not very easy because it's an opposition, and Jupiter is also planet of expansion, so it can really amplify our needs, make us feel them with great urgency. Especially, Virgo can also be criticism, severe overthinking, hair splitting, what if, worry, and basically mental restlessness. And Jupiter can expand this, but as it expands this, chances are it can also bring fated solutions, at least suggestions, at least possibilities, at least divine inspiration. Of course, it is up to us to decide if that is okay, if that is usable, applicable for us personally. Some of what this opposition might create might not be really ideal, but at least it is a possibility, and again, it is up to us personally to create this balance. Because if we focus on all the fears, all the worries, all the overthinking. This is not perfect, that is not perfect, that is not the way I want it, that is not the way I feel comfortable with, let's say. Well, then we are just inviting Jupiter to make this even more severe. But if we try to adapt a rather optimistic point of view where we more focus on Jupiter, let's not forget that both of these planets are planets of blessings. Jupiter is the greater benefic, Venus is the lower one. So it is really, really up to us to turn this into some kind of a blessing, even if it's in opposition. So this is actually where being optimistic, having faith, just trusting the power of the unconscious mind, that really, really powerful and mysterious intelligence with greater potential than our conscious, of course. There is really no reason why we shouldn't believe that we can attract something really positive or any kind of solution in our lives, even if that might not be 100% ideal. And ultimately, still at the very, very beginning of the week, we also have Mercury opposing Pluto in the sky. And this is an aspect which usually means not so favorable news and communication. This is where we might get a reply that, I'm sorry, no, it's not possible, we cannot help you at this time. Or the timing is not right for whatever you wanted to do at that moment. And this is where the reply can come from authorities, institutions, banks, let's say council, or the company you work at. But of course this can also come through as some kind of truth, some kind of very valuable information which might leave an impact on you, entering your sphere of awareness, and you just have to make a choice based on that. It can be a compromise, it can just be a choice to abandon something, leave something, allow the transformation Pluto to take place, or alchemize something, or sometimes not to take any action right now, but be patient, be diligent, just observe and go with the flow. But also for some people, this can also play out as some kind of really uncomfortable secret reaching them. At this time, Mercury is still in the sign of Cancer, and that is family, but it is also, the last decan of Cancer is Piscean in nature, and that rules the unconscious, it rules secrets, well-kept secrets, it rules the hidden and the invisible. So, if there is like a family secret, the secret of a family member, the secret of your partner or someone that you love, someone who is part of your life story, now that secret coming out might, shock you or surprise you, or it might be a game changer in one way or another. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything negative, but Pluto does have that heaviness to it, so for some people it can be quite challenging, quite hard to accept, or hard to process. At the same time, this can also play out as power games. Someone offers you something, someone comes up with a plan, with a solution, with a suggestion, and you have to make the choice, the decision, if you can accept the terms and conditions and just work with it, or if it's really, really not good for you, if it's against your principles or something that you just cannot accept. Again, Pluto. Of course, at this time, we might be a little bit edgy, we might be a little bit emotionally and also mentally quite vulnerable, which means that a lot of things can trigger us, especially words communication, things which we might misinterpret. So we have to be careful not to be extremely impulsive with our words and communication. Now the next day, around Tuesday, both Mars and Mercury are going to be in anaretic positions, which means the last 2 degrees of any sign, and any planet that is in those degrees has its symbolism greatly amplified. Now, Mercury in an erratic degree of Cancer can represent exactly what I said earlier. Hard to tell things that we have to confess and they're not easy to speak about, family secrets, family matters from the past, old wounds, hurts, or old unfinished business and stories which have an emotional impact. So at this time, let's try not to really put the blame on another person or project our inner wounds, our dissatisfaction, our emotional instability to other people through our words and communication. Because basically that is the downside of an aneretic Mercury in Cancer. Because Mercury in Cancer is the power of empathy, but that can be used in a bad way as well, where it is the empath who projects their own pain and problems onto other people emotionally, forcing others to feel their pain. So basically this is the downside of an aneretic Mercury, and like always, let's just be careful what we speak, how we communicate, and again what we project with our words onto other people. But the positive side to this is, Mercury in the last degrees of Cancer in an aneretic position may be something really, really big about us, our life stories, like a big epiphany, sudden realization, emotional eureka moment reaches us and it changes a lot of things. It definitely changes how we feel and how our emotional world is. And starting from that, a lot of other things can change. Now with Mars, it's a little bit different because Mars is in Leo, a part of the sky where it is extremely powerful, very, very assertive, very passionate, very brave and courageous, especially in the last degrees of Leo. In this part of the sky, our feelings, especially the fiery, assertive, very, very passionate feelings, dominate us very strongly. And while the positive side to this is definitely courage, bravery, being able to take action, being able to, for example, express yourself, speak your truth, stand up for yourself, defend yourself, fight for yourself, or take a big leap of faith with self-confidence. So all of that is quite positive and quite inspirational, but the negative side is, being way, way, way too confident, being very selfish, being a bully, being way too assertive, being aggressive, being violent, not being able to discipline our hearts, the anger, the frustration, the warrior's flames in our hearts. So this is where we really, even if it's very, very hard at this energy for everyone, even introverts, we really have to think before we take action. Just consider, if not anything, the moral implications of this. If what we are about to do or say or express, if it's truly us, or if it's just, our anger. Now, even though, personally speaking, this aneretic Mars in Leo is gonna create some heated moments for us, but collectively speaking, well, it is gonna be assertive, so we can expect moments of violence, even explosions, even clashes between two opposing forces, regardless in which sense. And of course, we can also be able to see on the world stage where perhaps some leaders, stars, VIPs, like public people, again Leo, do some very shocking, let's say, gestures, regardless in which sense. And also, this aneretic Mars is still connected to Eris, goddess of discord, in its home sign of Aries, so the ruling sign of Mars, and the galactic center from Sagittarius. So if there are protests and uprising, rebellion, revolution, people taking to the streets at this time, while people are gonna be extremely angry, extremely empowered, and these protests are gonna be a little bit different than we're used to. And I repeat, the chances for violence and seriously getting hurt is very high at this time. So if you're thinking about partaking, just consider this. This is one of the moments when, people are gonna be way too angry than to be rational. And at the same time, there is still that quincunx between Mars and Pluto. Pluto can be very ruthless, and Pluto in Capricorn can represent that centralized power, so authorities, law and order, law enforcement, police are gonna retaliate, so they're not gonna be permissive of this. But moving on, the next day we have energy shifts finally, where Mercury leaves the sign of Cancer and enters into Leo. Now, of course, Mercury is not going to be its strongest expression in this part of the sky, because Leo is fixed, fiery energy, so it is very, very focused on what it wants, what it feels, what it lives. So it is very, very self-centered. And while this is really, really good for self-expression, speaking our truth, expressing ourselves artistically, poetically, in writing, in speech, public speaking, communication, connecting with friends, attracting new people in our lives, friends, lovers, potential partners, or just total strangers even, through our charisma, through our intelligence, through our speaking, through our self-expression. It's really, really good for that, even for playfulness. It's really good for childlike activities like games, being together in a social gathering and just enjoying that, speaking, communicating, the pleasures and joy of connecting with other people. It's also very good to make spontaneous, very random decisions and choices based on our feelings, based on everything that has to do with the heart, our will, our inner passion, even our ego, not in a bad sense, of course. But these choices and decisions are not going to be very rational. Neither are they gonna be very well thought out. It's just taking the risk, going with the flow, deciding there and then randomly, spontaneously. And Mercury can actually work very well with that. And everything that really makes you feel passionate, everything that is part of your desire, part of your will, that will definitely fuel Mercury, your mind, your intellectual sphere to work very, very quickly and efficiently. But the downside of Mercury in the sign of Leo is that we might not have that much discipline, that much influence of our mental sphere, our intellectual sphere. We might find it kind of hard to focus on serious things, on business, on our duties and obligations of intellectual nature. This is where we might not be able to really force ourselves to do anything. We might find it that much easier to just go with the flow and, give the heart, our passions, our desires, that inner fire of Leo, its moment, and basically just do and adapt ourselves to what feels right there and then. The inner child, because we also have the sun in this part of the sky. We recently had Mars and Venus here, and now we have Mercury. All of this means that the inner child is very alive, very active, and definitely it wants to play, it wants to express itself, it wants to taste life, it wants to feel being alive in the now. So, like it or not, we just have to find a way, regardless of how difficult our situation is, to do that as well. The inner child doesn't really care how busy we are, it doesn't care how many responsibilities we have, when it wants to be alive and just be it, we have to do that. And then soon after, Mars is going to be leaving the sign of Leo and entering into the sign of Virgo. Mars is also not very comfortable in this part of the sky, because Virgo is very meticulous. Virgo thinks everything through a million times before it does it. And Mars is not like that. Mars takes action. Mars does. Mars is, singular, focused action. Or at its worst, it is like a volley of arrows. It's almost like a firestorm. It just detonates and explodes. So none of that expression of Mars is very compatible with Virgo. Because Virgo, has to think everything through before taking any action. Virgo is not the sign to decide so easily and spontaneously and just accept consequences before thinking them through. So Mars is forced to be disciplined, but the Virgo kind of discipline is not like the Capricorn kind of discipline, which Mars likes very much, because Capricorn gives Mars the power of mastery, the power of experience, everything that we've worked for already. So of course Mars finds it kind of easy to be focused, to be singular, to aim and then shoot and reach bullseye. With Virgo, it's not really the same, because Virgo is a mutable sign. Virgo learns, Virgo repeats and repeats and repeats to obtain mastery, to obtain skill, to refine everything. And also Virgo is a mercurial sign, so it's very, very intellectual. While Mars is much more instinctual. But even this energy is very useful in certain situations. Mars in Virgo is very good for, work, offering a service, sacrificing time and energy in order to accomplish something, to keep on motivated, keep on being determined, to follow our wants and wills and needs through with action and work. It is also very good for any kind of improvement that we need to create in our everyday lives, in our daily routines. For example, detox, going finally to the doctor with medical problems that we have delayed or neglected. So basically, it really gets the job done. This is where the devil is in the details, because one has to have the patience and understanding that there comes a time when even the details, the small things, have to be resolved and taken care of. Now, as Mars enters into the sign of Virgo, just like Venus did, it opposes Jupiter. And this opposition really invites us to think, consider, and even contemplate what we sacrifice and how we serve other people. This opposition invites us to take a look at the delicate balance in our lives. How much energy, effort, resources, time, so everything are we investing into the service of the self, our needs, our wants, our desires, and everything that we need for life practically. And how much energy, resources, and all of that we're sacrificing for other people. And other people, it doesn't really matter who it is. It can even be friends, it can even be family, it can even be children, parents, so very, very close people to us. And basically observing this balance, if it's healthy, if it's functional, how well does it serve us, gives us the chance to change that which needs to be changed. For example, if we're living a life of self-sacrifice and totally ignoring our own needs and our own lives, Jupiter in Pisces, we need to dissolve that and we need to take action, even if it's the most painful thing that anyone could ask of us, to stop helping a person who we love dearly. But of course, this can also be a very, very powerful karmic energy, Or if we have certain karmic debts in our lives, the Piscean nature, for example, a parent or a very important person helped us in our youth, in our childhood, brought us up, sacrificed a lot for us, while a time can come in our lives where we need to give that back somehow. This is the kind of energy which can just pull our souls and basically karmically forces, determine us to help a person in need to repay the karmic sacrifice that that person offered to us. May that be a parent, a partner, or any person who has a karmic link to us and has sacrificed for us at one moment in our lives. But at the same time, as I said, this is an opposition, so it's balancing. If this was already part of our lives, if this already played out, if we already returned the karmic favor, then this opposition might just ring the alarm bell that it's over, the karmic due was paid, and now we have to live life for ourselves and stop that self-sacrificial tendency and inner call. And this is where, Jupiter is the planet of expansion, and its expansive qualities work quite well with Mars because it will give a lot of motivation, a lot of inner strength needed to make everything that we need to do in order for this balance to be healthy. So, for example, even if we have to make very delicate and rather painful decisions, like for example when we're helping someone but we realize that our help is no longer beneficial, but we're just making that person lazy. So like it or not, we have to withdraw. This opposition can reflect a moment like that in our lives. And at the same time, we also have a conjunction where Mercury meets the Sun in the sign of Leo, and together they oppose Saturn in Aquarius. Now, this aspect is quite powerful, because the Sun and Mercury together in the Sun's home sign of Leo is a very powerful energy of truth, of revelation, basically being very, very connected, almost like living from our heart space, and that means being aligned to all of the truth that is in our hearts. This is one of those moments when what we feel, and basically, again I have to say this term, the truth within our hearts will be clear as daylight. There will be not even a shadow of a doubt about what the truth within our heart is, what we desire, who it is that we are, what we want to share with the world, with other people or whatnot. And it is exactly that truth and that state of being, of alignment, which will help us to make very clear, safe and sound decisions. First of all, what we want to do with our own future. Saturn in Aquarius, we are responsible for our own future, but that also means how are we going to overcome our obstacles and limitations? Because that Saturn equally represents all of the reasons why we're not living in the now, the future that we desire so much. So that means that something, may it be outer elements, inner elements, people, situations, whatever, prevents us from doing that. So the light of our consciousness, the Sun, and of course the light of our intellect, Mercury, together are gonna shed light on those obstacles and what it is that we need to do to overcome them, but with our own unique ways, because this is who we are in the very core of our hearts. Now, of course, even though this can be a rather uncomfortable energy, because Saturn in Aquarius, well, many times it can represent that the biggest obstacle is society and, the times that we are living in. And when that is what's being revealed to us, there is very little we can do to change that. The only solution to solve that situation is for us to find a way to withdraw from the influence of society and the times that we live in, basically. But at the same time, this energy can also represent breakthrough or finding an ingenious solution, attracting something or someone. Because in itself, the Sun and Mercury in the Sun's home sign is a very optimistic energy together. The Sun is combustive, so it just sparks of the flame of passion, the flame of desire, assertiveness even. So all of that means inner energy of the heart. And basically the magnetism of the heart, even from a purely scientific perspective, it does change a lot of things. And now we have reached the very end of the week, where we still have another aspect which I haven't spoken about, and this one is quite positive and inspirational, because Venus, as I said, not so very comfortable in the sign of Virgo, holds a trine to Uranus conjunct the moon in the sign of Taurus. Now this is very positive because Venus is the ruling planet of Taurus, where Uranus is. The moon is also exalted in the sign of Taurus. And whenever the moon is conjunct Uranus, it has an effect of really enlivening the emotions. It's almost like shocking our emotional world to much greater activity. And this energy can create very pleasant surprises because this is an earth trine after all. So this energy can play out in quite a material and down-to-earth way. This can be like solutions to our most urgent problems, Venus in Virgo. It can also be a beautiful and unexpected present, surprise, gift, offering, material help from someone. It can also be a very lucky opportunity, finding a job or being able to perform a service. It's really good for everyone who is freelance, who has their own business as well. This is also an inspired energy for financial investments, finding professionals out there, people who you need in your life to help you achieve this or that. And because the moon is an active part of this, it can mean that sometimes it is not really your mental sphere, but rather your soul, your intuition, your inner voice that has a very specific intelligence of its own, especially together with Uranus, planet of the highest intelligence, the higher octave of Mercury. So sometimes that inner guidance, that intuition, that inner voice can actually steer us into the most ideal, the most shocking and surprising outcome of events, and all of this in the most positive sense because this is a trine, so it is a blessing. And of course, whenever Venus is involved, well, this energy can be quite romantic. It can be a love-related surprise, a romantic surprise, a present, a gift, which is not just beautiful or brings pleasure, but it's also very practical and very much needed. Virgo again. So basically this is the energetic configuration of next week. Thank you so very much for listening. I wish everyone a blessed and magical next week. Until next time, bye for now.